Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my YouTube channel. At this point, I'm going to tell you about my Dubai trip, which happens to be, one of my bucket list items. I'm extremely excited that I've been able to accomplish or to have this ticked on my bucket list, because it is the dream and ambition of a lot of people, quite a lot of people, to visit a place like Dubai and before they actually pass on. And I'm quite grateful that at least once in my lifetime I've been able to do so, essentially. So this particular video is just to walk you through what it took for me to, how I even came by the idea, how the preparatory work, all the paperwork involved, how I ended up getting the visa, what the experience really was like from the beginning to the end. Okay, so stay tuned and keep watching. Okay, good. So the very first part of this video is going to cover the inception of the idea. How did the concept of me traveling to Dubai come to bear? Okay, so at the end of the day, let's face it, it is the ambition of a lot of people, not just myself, a lot of people to travel to a place like Dubai, simply because Dubai is one of the finest cities in the world. It is one of the top travel destinations in the world, and I'm sure a lot of people want to travel or visit Dubai before they pass on. So I just happened to be on one of the social media platforms, just scrolling through, and I came across a travel agency, a name I cannot mention because I've not been paid to advertise them. So until they do so, I'm sorry, my lips will be sealed. All right, so I came across this travel agency, and essentially they offered, or they were making an offering as far as a package or a travel package to Dubai is concerned. So I found it to be quite interesting. It just happened that around that time, I was also looking for something exciting to do. We were nearing Christmas. It was close to December, and I wanted something to do for an activity, a travel experience, or something to do for December, since most of my life I've been spending it in the same place, in the same country, which was quite boring. So I decided to do something different this time around. So once I came across that post about that particular agency, I thought it wise to do a follow-up and see if that offer was real, because don't believe everything you see on social media. Some of them are just, fraudulent in nature. But this particular deal happened to be a genuine one, as you would see later. So I contacted them, and I got basic information about what the trip is, about where we'll be visiting, the kinds of things we'll be doing, the requirements which were needed for me to also embark on this trip. The offer or the package was just a little above $1,000 at the time, and so I found it to be quite interesting and quite affordable. And one of the factors which made me take that decision at that time was that, well, considering the fact that, exchange rates, are not stable in my part of the world or where I come from, it would be advisable to take the trip now and save on money so that I wouldn't have to pay much more for the same trip at a later point. So that was one of the main ideas behind me agreeing to take that trip. Secondly, I did my background check about that particular agency, and it just happened that they were very genuine. Everybody who had experienced them or used them gave positive reviews about them. So it heightened or piqued my interest and also convinced me further that this was a trip I should take. Thirdly, come on, let's face it, like I said earlier, it happens to be a bucket list item, for so many people across the world, not just people from Africa, but people from the States and so on. When I was there, I met people from different continents, different parts of the world, from Europe, from the States, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it is actually a place where everybody wants to visit, or many people want to visit before they actually pass on. Okay, so these were some of the reasons why I decided, I made that decision, to embark on this particular trip to Dubai. Okay, good. So the second point I'm going to elaborate on is contacting the travel agency which was involved, or which actually facilitated this process. Now, contacting them was relatively easy since they had left their contact details all over their posts, so I could easily contact them. But one thing I would say is that if you still want to use, or you want to travel through an agency, please do your background checks. Not all agencies would be able to give you, a good story or a success story. So please do your background checks. Ensure that the particular travel agency you are trying to work with is a genuine one, can be trusted, and you're not going to lose your money. Okay, so I did my background checks. I spoke to quite a number of people who had actually experienced their services, had utilized them, and I kept getting positive recommendations. So in terms of contacting the travel agency, this was what the feedback I was able to gather. Okay, now once I contacted them, I was made to know that I would need a relevant passport to travel, of course. Okay, but at the time I didn't have a passport. I'll come to that later. So of course I would need a passport, an international passport, to travel. I would also need to make some deposit or payment in relation to cover some of the travel expenses, or most of it basically. They also gave me information about what the package entailed. So the package at the time, covered my tickets, that's my return ticket to and from Dubai. Also covered pickups from the airport to the hotel. Also covered in-city transportation. So wherever we had an itinerary item, the bus or transportation was organized for myself or the group which I went with, and it was whatever. It was quite an experience. It was better than going by myself, because that was my first international trip at the time. It was convenient because I didn't have to worry or think about how I'm going to arrange for transportation, who I'm going to go with, security issues, and all of that was sorted out. Okay, so the travel agency also, their package also included breakfast, every single day. We're there for about 6 to 7 days. Okay, so breakfast for all the days. It also covered some visitation sites, or tourist destinations where we're going to have fun. Okay, so it covered I'll come to that, but it covered some very key areas where we went to have fun. In fact, I didn't have to spend any money at all of my own beyond what I paid to the travel agency, because they had covered about 90% of the expenses that we were going to make in that area. Okay, aside from the only money I had to spend was little money on food here and there. But that is a matter I'll discuss in part 2 of our videos. So essentially, they told me the requirements and what I needed to do to be able to join that particular trip or benefit from the package. Okay. Now, the third part, or the third issue I'll discuss for part 1, has to do with fulfilling the paperwork. Okay, fulfilling the paperwork. Now, everybody will agree with me, that those who've traveled before would agree that before you travel, or before you get the opportunity to travel, you will certainly need a visa for countries where your country is not a visa-free, doesn't have that visa-free arrangement with them. Okay, so at the end of the day, I also had to file my paperwork. I had to get a passport. I had to also get the relevant documentation to be able to file for a visa. Now, as for the passport, I had to get it and secure it by myself. I didn't have a passport at the time. I don't know what I was waiting for. Well, I think I had one previously, but it had expired. And so I had to renew my passport. Yes, this is more factual. I had to actually renew my passport. The previous passport, I had one, but I had never used it, and it ended up expiring. So I had to actually renew my passport, and that is what I did. It took quite a bit of time for me to renew my passport. The experience involved this time around was quite different because the process has actually been digitized in my country, and so it was quite a bit smooth, just that it took time. Okay, on days where you are scheduled and all of that, you have to clear your schedule because you may spend quite a bit of hours there. But it's far better than what I went through when I was doing or making my first passport. Okay, good. So eventually I went through the process. I even made a friend at the passport office. I went through the process. I filled the online portal, filled the form, got the references which were needed, got a reference letter from my office, and so on and so forth. And I was able to file for my passport. You would then pick an available date to come and take your biometrics and at the passport office. So I did so, and they scheduled me for a date. I went to the passport office on the scheduled date and time, or at the scheduled date, on the scheduled date, and at the scheduled time. I took my biometrics and everything went quite well. I was given a later date to come and pick up my passport. Fortunately for me, on the day that I was scheduled, when I went, my passport was ready. I just picked it up and that was it. So it was a bit better than the previous system, which we may know. Good. So now I have my passport. The next thing was for me to fulfill the other requirements. Okay, so the other requirement was for me to pay the 1,000 plus USD, which I was supposed to pay to the agency. I think at the time they had some package for installment payments, but in my case, since I had already done my background checks and I was very bent on traveling, I also made a decision very late. So I stumbled upon their package very late. So later I got to know that I was actually the last person to join the trip. But since it was about a month or two, about 2 or 3 months to the time, I quickly just paid in full. Even though they had installment packages, I just paid the entire amount in full, transferred it to the account details, and essentially they confirmed receipts. And from there, they took charge of everything else. So over here, I need to really commend the travel agency because they did a really, really, really fantastic job. In fact, I would always recommend traveling with a trusted travel agency because they sort out almost everything, or they are able to sort out almost everything for you. I know of others who didn't have it this easy, okay, in terms of acquisition of visa, in terms of everything else, okay? So stick and stay with this channel. Watch part 2 of this series to be able to appreciate or take it up from the visa acquisition point up until when we traveled and got to Dubai and how the experience was. It was amazing and fantastic, and you'll get to see images and pictures of what actually happened in Dubai. All right, so stick and stay with the channel. Watch the next part for a continuation. Bye bye for now.